Okay, so we're going to get started here today. My name is Trey, and this is my lovely volunteer, and we're going to show you guys what a typical healing session with me would be like. So when I have the client on the table, one of the first things that we're going to do is tap in. This tapping in is a biokinetic muscle testing. I use the muscle testing and or what I call muscle dowsing to get a definitive yes or no from my client's body. So whenever I do that, if you want to place that hand down there, when I'm doing the muscle testing, I'll use the client's hand, and she's just laying here. She's not doing anything or thinking anything. This isn't the same as typical muscle testing where we ask the client to resist and then we're kind of testing that way. This is just very relaxed and passive. So when I'm working with the client, I'll ask her, show me yes, and the hand is going to test weak like this, and then I say, show me no, and we have resistance, okay? So show me yes, weak, and show me no with resistance. When we do this testing, everybody's body is set up in this way. So it's kind of like our bodies are like computer programs that are set up on a binary system of ones and zeros, yes and no, yin and yang, Shakti and Shiva. If you're looking at a battery, it's going to be the grounding, the black cable and the red cable, or with the battery, it's going to be the positive or negative. Now, I use this muscle dowsing to basically navigate through her subconscious or through her body, and it helps me to gauge a definitive yes or no so that when I'm using my intuitive abilities, I'm able to simply ask the body, is what I'm sensing, seeing, or feeling accurate? And then her body will tell me yes or no if I need more details or not. Now, before we even get started, I always muscle test and ask the body if permission is a priority. Is permission a priority? The body's saying no. Now, if it was, it may require her to say, I give myself permission to heal. Or if it's me, the practitioner, I may need to step back, reset my breath, and then go into the healing session. Because sometimes it's something going on with the practitioner, sometimes there's something going on with the client. So once we get past permissions, then we start going into priority. Now, the idea behind this type of work is we always want to honor the body and what the body is asking for. So when we're looking at the body, we have the conscious mind, and then we have the subconscious. When we're looking at this, it's like the subconscious mind or the body, it carries out about 90% of our functions. And this is like what we would call the internal programming or internal software. We know this is going to make up how we look, how we dress, not how we dress. It's going to make up how we look, the color, the texture of our hair, all of these things. This is internal coding that we get from our family. And then the other part of it are programs that are kind of that we upload ourselves, basically, which are going to be like if we play soccer, if we're musically talented, these sort of things. So we're always looking at the internal software. Now, the most important part about this work is always honoring and knowing that the body has an innate ability to heal, and that it's constantly healing. It's constantly doing all the things that it needs to do for you to survive, and for you to run most optimally as you possibly can. So with that in mind, we can look at defense mechanisms. We can look at what the body's compensation patterns are in order to do so. So when we're doing this type of work, those are the things that we're looking at. I always tell people that whenever we cut ourselves, we're going to bleed, the blood's going to coagulate, we're going to send red blood cells and white blood cells. The conscious mind is not telling the body to do that. The subconscious does that automatically, like cellular respiration, metabolism of food. These are all programs that the body run without our conscious telling it to do so. Now, when we're doing this work, we're going to retrieve the information from the subconscious. I'm going to translate that to my client. Her conscious mind's going to say, yes, that makes total sense, or yes, I'm in agreement to this. And we're going to tap over the head and tap over the heart. This is getting the mind and the body to carry out that particular function, okay? So this is how we get the conscious and subconscious to work together. It's like, I know I'm bleeding, now I'm going to put the ointment, I'm going to put the Band-Aid. This is what the conscious mind is telling the subconscious, working with the subconscious, and then we get accelerated healing. The difference with a lot of this is when we have physical injury, we know we can go to a doctor, a hospital, or maybe we have some knowledge about treating those particular things. when it comes to spiritual wounds, inherited family patterns, mental, emotional wounds, we're not as well versed on what we need to do. And a lot of those things are very specific and very customized to each single person that is going through them or experiencing them. And this is what is the beauty of the work, because not everybody, it's like one size doesn't fit all, right? So we can't really just think that every single person that's having an issue is, we can't use protocols for a lot of this, because it is so customized to and for each specific individual and what they're experiencing, and also how the body is coping with and layering these different compensation patterns. Okay, so that's why it's very important as a practitioner to listen to the person's body, get the information that it's needed, and then do the work in accordance to priority. So, my client may know that something happened to her at a certain time frame. There's some sort of trauma, injury, emotional, whatever, but we can't always go directly to that. We have to ask the body, what are you ready to work through and heal through at this time, because of the way we layer these compensation patterns, the way that the body layers the compensation patterns. So it's kind of like pulling on a string, and then it just becomes more entangled, versus slowly unweaving and unraveling until we get to that space where we can actually make that more deeper correction, because we have so many layers of compensation that are happening there. So with that being said, I think we can just go ahead and dive into an example. When I'm teaching, I always tell my students the best thing for me to do is just show you how it works. Like, we could sit here and talk about this all day long, but once you start to see how the work is working, then it makes more sense to you, and then you can understand it a lot better. So we will start with the muscle testing. Are you good? You ready?
Yes.
Okay. So we start with the muscle testing. Once I tap in this way, sometimes I'll ask the client to just take a deep breath. We sync our breaths together. Exhale whenever you're ready. Now, as soon as I tap in this way, it's kind of like things become less linear, and I start getting more of a holographic understanding of what's happening. So I'll tap into my intuitive abilities, which are clairaudience. I'll actually hear things that your body's communicating to me. Clairvoyancy, where I'm seeing images. Sometimes I see video with the audio. Sometimes I have clairsustenance, where I'm actually feeling imbalances happening in my own body that help guide me to what could be going on with you. And then I use a lot of my intuitive knowledge of my outside of the intuitive knowledge, I use a lot of my tools that I've used throughout the years, that I've learned throughout the years. These are assessment tools, things that I know through traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, yoga. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I'm always asking, because we may start off with energy matrix work, which is primarily what I'm talking about here. But the body could be asking for cranial sacral therapy, could be asking for reflexology. There's a number of different modalities that the body may need in terms of body work, energy work, and then the client wants to know what is going on. So I always say that I'm including healing education, because the client wants to know what's going on with my body. Almost every single person that gets off my table says, what do I do now? What do I go home and do? What is my homework? How do I help to either accelerate the healing or understand and work with what's happening, what my body's doing? And so this is always an important part of it. So we're just going to dive into kind of a sample session so you get an idea of how this works, and how a session would go with me if you were getting treated by me. Okay. So the first thing that's coming up is working on her connection to something that's happened in the past. Okay, so it's showing etheric body. A lot of times when I'm doing this work, you'll hear me talk about the mental body, the emotional body, the physical body, the astral, ethereal, or sexual body. And it's kind of the way that it plays out is we have these different bodies the same way we have different systems, like cardiovascular, respiratory, integumentary, things like that. This is all holographically who you are as a being. we're more than 50 trillion cells pieced together to make a community that functions as its own system. So how does that work and how does that happen? And this is what we're tapping into. So the etheric body is like the space between. We're constantly kind of taught these, like that's the camera over there, here's Serena here, here's the table, but we're often not taught to think in terms of the space in between, like what connects or holds all of this together. Even when we're talking with sound is a wave that has to travel through a medium to get to a person's ear, right? Sight is like a vision, it is light that has to travel through something in order to hit the rods and the cones in the back of your eye for you to be able to see. So the etheric body is kind of the space in between. It's that medium that holds everything together. Now, this is within the bodies themselves, but this is also outside of the body. So this is what connects somebody to the people in their lives, their career, the places that they go to and frequent. Sometimes even the places we live, we're drawn to the mountains or we're drawn to the ocean because there's something within our etheric body that is drawing us to that particular vibrational frequency. And so with this in particular, we're working with the etheric body, and this is a connection to something that has happened in the past. Now, whatever's happened in the past, it's sometimes I'll get very clear readings on what that is, and sometimes I don't. Now, the information that is coming through with this is working on the pelvic, not the solar plexus, the sacral chakra, which is the color orange. This is our sensual creative energy. So this is where our sexuality, our sexual energy is, our creative energy. This is kind of the idea of this is like when you look at the Kama Sutra and the Tantric arts, or people call it Kundalini energy, depending on which modality you're working with. This is where our creative sensual energy is at, and this is where we kind of, if you're a female, this is where the child is going to be, this is where the birthing process is going to take place here. So this is a very sacred and very powerful center. Now, what's coming up with this is we want to go in and cleanse like any energetic debris that may be there. Now, we're talking about energetic debris. Sometimes we're, in relationships with people. Sometimes there's remnants of things that are kind of storing in this area that we want to clear from the body. Sometimes if we get cysts, there's women that also have what is it called? Endometriosis and other things that happen, cysts, things that form in these areas, that would also be considered part of that. I think we were having a conversation earlier about birth control and hormonal changes that also have effects with this. If you're using whatever type of feminine hygiene products that you're using during your menses, like sometimes these things, we know that it can create toxic shock syndrome. So what else could it be creating in this area? Even though we're working energetically, energetics are basically everything, right? Energy is everything, including more dense things that are physical. So energetics, the emotions, all of these things can be tied to the physical tissues and can create issues in the body. So just because we're doing like quote unquote energy work doesn't mean that it's not going to affect the physical form, and vice versa. Everything is energy. A lot of times the energetic is the blueprint that's holding everything in place. So when we work with the blueprint or we work with that, releasing that, then the tissues and everything can function more properly. So I'm just going to get a little bit more information here. Yeah. So there's a whole cleansing process that is going to take place here. Now, sometimes if you're somebody who also is like in a committed relationship, or you're looking forward to like getting pregnant soon or something like that, the body will sometimes do these things to help rid itself of anything, because the child is going to be, the egg is going to be implanted in the gestation. Like, our wombs are the environment for our unborn children. And it's not that you're going to get pregnant right away or something like that, because some of these processes will take many moon cycles or many menses, where our bodies, like literally the uterus is flushing these things out of the tissues, and emotionally we're releasing a lot of the things too that could be storing in those tissues or in those cells through those menses. And this does happen a lot with women where they have very painful periods, or they have cysts, or they have polyps, or they have all kinds of things that are taking place there. We want to be able to allow the body to filter and release these things that are storing and holding here. So this is what your body wants to do at this time. Is there any further information? No. Okay. Does this make sense? Do you have any questions?
Makes sense.
Okay. Go ahead and take a deep breath in. Exhale whenever you're ready. So I ask the client to take a deep breath. We tap over the head and tap over the heart. I always tell people that this is like a kind of like agreeing to a computer program. So the body, the computer, our phones, they don't update themselves. They don't download things on their own. The user of the computer, which is you, has to go and decide, I need this program, I need this thing to help me with whatever it may be, and then you say, I agree to the terms and conditions, I agree to my phone making these changes or my computer to making these changes. Now, you do have to go and learn how to use that program. So when we're doing this work, people are going to have to go through the process where probably her next 3 cycles at least are going to be very different than they normally are, because now her body's cleansing, her body's purging things out. She'll get intuitive insights as to what it is that her body's asking her to release. This can also be things that just block her creative energy. They block her playfulness, her, flirtiness, or things like that, because this is also a very like youthful, playful type of energy. And when we get stuck and stagnant in this, our creativity gets blocked, our playfulness gets blocked. There's a number of different things that also take place here that I'm not sure exactly what her body's wanting to work with there, but this is something that she'll walk away with. Her body will do the work for her, and she'll receive whatever guidance, insights, or whatever is releasing to come through for her in a very organic way, because her body's doing the work versus using like a chemical formula, which is going to force her body to purge these things. She's going to organically be allowing her body and using the innate ability to heal to do the work for her. All right. So the next thing that we're going to do here is we're going to go into some cranial sacral therapy. And so this is kind of how the sessions will work. I always tap back in. I honor and ask the body what it's asking for, what it needs from me. We do the work, and then we will just move through whatever it is her body is asking for. Maybe she wants some reflexology. Maybe we're doing cranial. Maybe we're using essential oils. We always honor what the body wants and needs in a particular order and sequence, because the body knows. And so instead of me, like, yes, I have lots of knowledge and I've studied and I've treated many, many people and I've taught many classes in these modalities, but instead of being in my ego about what I think the body needs, I simply ask, and then I test to make sure that what I'm sensing, feeling, and seeing is accurate, and I always honor the body and work in accordance to that. And it's amazing the work that is able to be done at that when we use this particular format or take this particular approach. And the client is always like an active participant in what is taking place, and they can agree to these things and or disagree depending on what it is that they want to do. We always work with permission and also with priority. So do you want to go ahead and go into some cranial sacral therapy?
Yeah. I was curious, so how do we set the body? Like after it says like I want to be purged, how does that how do we set it to let it like purge?
So the tapping over the head and tapping over the heart is what sets that energetic matrix in motion. So the same way that we use chemical formulas, herbal formulas to have an effect on our body, like let's say we're taking blood pressure medication, that's a chemical formula that we take internally that's going to have a chemical reaction within the body to regulate the blood pressure in particular. There's herbal formulas that help with other things as well. These are energetic formulas that the body carries out themselves, and the body is always going to be using energetic formulas all the time, from everything from cellular respiration, the copying of DNA and mRNA, the body's constantly using these codes, and this is one of the codes that the body uses. Now we tap over the head and tap over the heart after I give the client the information, so the client's making an agreement that yes, I want the body to purge, this all makes sense to me, I do want to release that. So it's based upon your agreement. And when we think about agreements and acknowledgement, like everything from the day you're born, there's an agreement. People sign, your parents sign your birth certificate. Whenever you die, you sign the death certificate. When you decide to be in a relationship with somebody, you're making an agreement. Even the food that we choose to eat, the lifestyles that we choose to have, it's all based upon our agreement between what is happening on the subconscious level, what is being brought to us, what's being presented to us, and what our conscious mind is in agreement to. And the thing that happens is, like, when we're small children, our brainwave frequency is in what we call theta, and this is also like a hypersuggestible state. In hypnosis, this is where we get people. And theta frequency is also where you're at when you're sleeping. This is where your brainwave is operating, and this is why children have a hard time differentiating reality from fantasy. So they're very impressionable. All of us are very impressionable at that age, and whatever information comes in, it gets stored in our subconscious. And so you may get programs related to your parents' relationship that you think this is how relationships are. And then you grow up, you have a relationship, and you're like, why am I running into these issues? It's because your subconscious programming is how this is how relationships are. This is how you show up in the world. We make these agreements without being able to read the contract or read the agreement as children. And this is kind of how the format takes place. But as we get older, if these things are working for us, then there's no need to change them. If it's not working, then we'll start running into issues. We'll start running into delays. Those could be physical, where we're getting skin rashes, we're getting heart palpitations, we're suffering from anxiety. They could also be interpersonal, where we're having arguments, disagreements, things aren't working out in our relationship space. We can't ask for what we need, or we're not able to receive. So it really depends on what's going on with you, will depend the symptoms that you're experiencing, and whether that's happening mentally, emotionally, physically, but holographically, it's all one. So the way that these matrices set are based upon your agreement. But it's the same thing with you watching this video. You have an agreement to watch the video. Whatever information comes through is going to get transferred to you. Upon your agreement is what's going to allow the transformation to take place. Because you could deny the information and say that doesn't work, and is it going to create the transformation in you that it would if you were in agreement to it? And just think about some of our favorite books, some of our favorite stories, some of our favorite songs. We're in agreement to allowing that information to be input. And I know for myself, I can rehearse like some of my favorite lines from stories, from songs, because it's now input in my brain, in my memory, and I have access to that data whenever I want. So it's going along that thread in terms of what we want to have available to us and how we use it.
Very cool.
All right, so we're going to get started with some cranial sacral therapy.